Guys, UFC 314 is coming up, and my partners at DraftKings are helping get you in on all the action. In the co-main event, it's going to be Chandler versus Pimlet. In the main event for the World Championship, Volkanovski taking on Lopes. You are not going to want to miss this fight night, and right now, my partners at DraftKings are offering all new customers $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Download the DraftKings app right now. When you sign up, use the code SONNEN. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Use your $150 at DraftKings same-game parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight. Love the thrill of live betting? DraftKings has got you covered. Bet live on in-progress fights as they happen, which makes watching the fights that much more exciting. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Pick 6 with a shot at cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. New customers use my code SONNEN. Bet just $5 on any wager and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code SONNEN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The UFC, as a policy, whoever goes in the main event, whatever weight class is being contested in the main event, on the main card, that same weight class will be a featured match. So let's take a look. What we're talking about here, we got Volkanovski versus Lopes, 145 pounds. So we're going to put a feature match of Yair Rodriguez and Pitbull. Same weight class of 145 pounds. Going to stick that on the main card. That does a few things. First off, card subject to change, but as a promoter, you want to make that card that's subject to change as close to the product that you promised as you possibly can. So it's a very good idea when you've got all the same pieces and sometimes you put them in a different order. Audience appears to like that. Okay. And then you got to find athletes that agree. And you would be stunned. There is no sport that I'm aware of that has as many cowards as MMA. Like I've never seen a sport where guys want to go to work less than they do in MMA. 99.9% of cage fighters think it's a cool thing to be a cage fighter. Like whatever pocket of society they're from or their classmates or whatever, but they think that's a cool thing to be able to tell people, I'm a cage fighter. And all that they want to do, they don't want to make money. They don't want to be world champion. They don't want to be busy. They just want to keep the contract so they can keep the status so they can continue to tell people I'm a cage fighter. They don't actually want to go do the job. And I'm sharing that with you because it's one of the reasons the UFC had to come up with this policy. When there was a last minute change, they'd make a phone call. The guy would say no. And you could add commas, and you could add zeros, and you could add promises, and you could make it a main event. Maybe it would even be for a world title. You're still getting the same answer. When the public's not watching, those big, brave cage fighters all say the same word, no. So now all of a sudden, you take their excuse away. You create an inability for them to say, I'm not in shape. I'm not prepared. I can't make weight in time. When you have them already on the card, historically speaking, we've had almost 100% success rate of doing matchup switching when we take somebody that's already on the card, and it's only because they don't get a say, let me check my calendar. They already know where they're going to be. Their team already knows where they're going to be. Their coaches already know where they're going to be. And I'm just bringing this to you because though we're contesting the world championship at 145 pounds, 145 is greatly on display. Look, I've been very disappointed with 145 pounds. I'm disappointed, and I'm a very respectful guy of Volkanovski. Volkanovski is just a wonderful talent. I don't question that, but there's no way for me to tell you the story and remain cheerful and happy sounding as it pertains to Volkanovski. He simply should not be here. They woke him up in his last fight. They woke him up to inform him he was no longer the champion of the world. Oh, and by the way, that was by a guy who's left the division. The fight before that, and one of the ones before that, he's lost 3 of his last 4, and they were all by knockout. I don't believe that we've ever had somebody in the promotion's history that lost 3 of his previous 4 and was put into a world title fight. Now, good for Volk. I'm not turning on him. What I'm turning on is the fellow 145 pounders that allowed this to happen. This was not a great conversation of who are we going to put in this fight. You had Ilia Topuria who stepped aside. You had Lopes by default because he's beaten up so many guys. And you had Volkanovski because he was speaking up and asked for it. You don't have another guy. There was not another person under contract that even submitted their name or put in an application for this job. I have a big problem with that. As a matter of fact, if we're being literal about it, the most vocal person to try to get a title shot at 145 pounds happens to be Pitbull, whose first time in the octagon will be when they ring the bell Saturday night. And that's the feature match. Pitbull versus Rodriguez. Uriel Rodriguez is a straight up badass. And Uriel Rodriguez does not care if anybody believes that. He has never sang his own praises. Uriel Rodriguez never gets on Twitter and calls for title fights and tells people how great he is. Uriel Rodriguez, in all fairness, not only beat Brian Ortega, he beat Ortega at Ortega's own game, and he did it quickly and somehow let the history books kind of tell the story differently, and he kept his mouth shut as they did it. Like Rodriguez, for the badass that he is versus the badass he claims to be, he's really quite a gentleman. And I'm bringing that to you because Pitbull is playing a different game. Pitbull is being very loud. Pitbull wants to be fighting for that world championship. He wants to be fighting for that world championship right now. All right, guys, I've got a charger, and if this cord comes out, the whole video dies. I don't want the video to die when I'm in mid-thought because I just left the Coliseum. I just watched these guys get weighed in. Where I see them weigh in, then you got this backdrop and the octagon. I mean, the actual apparatus, the actual octagon that they're going to contest this thing. And things, they start to feel different. They get real as this time gets closer. And I do look at 145 pounds, and I don't know what the hell is wrong with those guys. I don't know how they let a guy who's 37 years old and been knocked out in 3 of his last 4, I don't know how they let him get a world title fight. And when you come to speaking up, Diego Lopes doesn't even speak English. So you got one guy that, as long as current events is the course, if we're talking history and ancient history, yeah, we found the best 145 pounder that there's ever been. That's true. If the course is history, not if it's current events, you then go look at Lopes in a game that is largely about speaking up, and you have a guy that said nothing because he can't. That's where you have to look at Pitbull. I mean, the fight that is going the most undetected on this card is Rodriguez versus Pitbull, and Rodriguez is a very hard draw. If you can get the jump on Uriel Rodriguez, and very, very few men ever have, but all of those men do have one thing in common, which is they end up fighting for a world title, and I think that the same thing's to be true for Pitbull. Pitbull's 37 years old, that's true, but look at his path. He was the Bellator champion. But let's just look at his path, because it sounds a lot like Michael Chandler, who came over here, and with one win, Michael Chandler then fought for the championship of the world. And I think that I would champion that cause. If Pitbull, and it's a big if, but if Pitbull on day one can play this game well enough to beat Rodriguez in a division that is full of, they're either mutes or they're cowards, you can choose, then I think he should get the opportunity. I do think if only one applicant shows up and asks for a job, by default, if nothing else, that person should get the position. And as far as this UFC goes, that one person is Pitbull. Now, he's going to have to prove it, and we're not giving him anything, and he's going to have to get through Rodriguez. But if he does, and he takes the microphone, and he calls for a world title fight, that will make him the only 145-pounder to demand or even ask nicely for a world title fight.